race, accomplish what you will. My people. Wake up and remember the fight of King Selassie I. Marcus Garvey said a long time. Up your mind to race, accomplish what you will. My people, you are strong. Liberate the mind. For chance has never yet satisfied the hope of our suffering people at all. You are not my brother, I am not your sister, but we have got to be soldiers in the same battlefield to achieve true liberty. Liberate the minds of men, ultimately liberating the bodies of men. Yeah. This is our revolution call. Liberate for us. New generation. New generation. New generation. New generation. How long will the rich get rich off your children's back, sweat, blood and tears? Them I do it for years. Hear the children call them a ball. A nation without education can't box the white swan. This is serious. It's rough to see some a wipe, some a shine, some a kill, some in a broad daylight. The temple of the Most High begins with a body which houses our life, the very essence of our existence. Where is your respect for life? Love with true intention. Build a better nation. Tell the youth the truth for us. Educate your mind. Liberation time for us. Africans are in bondage today because they approach spirituality through religion, provided by foreign invaders and conquerors. We must stop confusing religion with spirituality. Religion is a set of rules, regulations, and rituals created by humans, which was supposed to help people grow spiritually. Due to human imperfection, religion has become corrupt, political, divisive, and a tool for power struggle. Spirituality is not theology or ideology. It is simply a way of life, pure and original, and was always given by the Most High of creation. Emancipate.
All right, we're just getting you guys, around the information/education table so that before we could make a start in earnesty. Let me say a special good evening to all of you tuned in at this time to the Civic Vibes platform. Just in case you don't know, my name is Loftus Dura. I'm here as well with Brother Alvin Thomas. You normally see us every Sunday evening from 6 o'clock, but this evening is a special edition of the Civic Vibes sort of educating you, the masses out there. So yes, it's a pleasure to have you on board at this time. Today, it's a brand new month, the 1st of August, and what a significant date it is for us Black people in this part of the world. As we celebrate Emancipation Day, you may say emancipation from what? We have a very, very special invited guest here tonight, an erudite brother, I must say. He's very, very versed in that kind of information/education. Brother Bernard Wilshire is here tonight, former Attorney General of Dominica, attorney at law, practicing attorney in Dominica, a no-nonsense man, I must add. And so knowing Brother Bernard Wilshire, this day, could not have passed him just so without he saying something to us in Dominica. Why the significance of that day being 1st of August as we celebrate Emancipation Day. But before we get to brother Wilshire, let me say a special good evening to Alvin Thomas. Alvin, did we flush you out tonight, Alvin, from your comfort zone?
Well, duty calls, you know. That's what we're on this Feast of the Surf for. We're not there for ourselves. We're there to be, as I always say, to be of service to humanity.
True.
And when duty calls, you have to step in line. As an old scout myself, I learned that very well. You always have to be ready and be prepared.
Indeed.
So whatever it takes to respond, then definitely I got to do it. And what we're going to be discussing or having a conversation on this evening is so important. It's so important, Lofty. And I think part of the problem why we have all the problems that we have, not just in Dominica, but throughout the region, is because many of our folks today do not know their history. They do not know their history. They have not been able to go back in time. And like it says, if a man does not know where he comes from or his history, he's doomed. True. He's doomed to repeat the same mistake, or he doesn't know how to proceed. So I think that is important. I'm happy to be able to join that conversation with my brother, Bernard Wilshire. You know, I know Bernard for many, many, many years now, those early days in DA, when some folks thought he was a madman. He was a troublemaker. You know, I don't know how much of that he still has in him, but I think the last time I heard him, he was still very fired up. So I'm looking forward to the conversation, and I see a number of folks have already joined the live. So hopefully we'll have a very good conversation tonight.
Yes, indeed. Alvin, always thank you very much, my brother, for your making yourself present each and every time. As you say, when duty calls, indeed. Folks, without further ado, let me move across now to welcome in a very special way on that special edition of Civic Vibes tonight, Brother Bernard Wilshire. Brother Wilshire, good evening to you, sir.
Good evening, my friend and colleague, comrade Lofty, and good evening, my friend and long time, how do you call it? More than just acquaintance. We worked together. We dreamt together for Dominica. Alvin, we dreamt together for Dominica.
Certainly, certainly.
It was a generation, we belonged to a generation that dreamt, that did dreaming, that dreamt for the stars, that dreamt, that imagined, a generation that believed that we should be participants in our own destiny. Not just participants, we should be the authors of our destiny. Coming from slavery, where we had everything was stripped away from us, from our people, stripped away, literally stripped away. We were reduced to the status of beasts of burden. And beasts of burden, our people remained for 400 years. Incidentally and interestingly, the same period of time that the Israelites said in the Bible that they remained as slaves for. And a very interesting fact also is that in the Caribbean, something like 650,000 Africans were freed on this day in 1834. How many years is that, Brother Alvin? I have not a chance to calculate. 1834 to 2023. How many years?
That's 189 years ago.
189 years ago.
1834.
On the 1st of August, the slave master, the administrator of Dominica, I think he was awed he was forced to read a proclamation declaring that slavery had ended, that the slavery as a system had come to an end. And our people in our sentiment could rhyme with Martin Luther King, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. It didn't feel like that on the day. It didn't feel like that. It was a very subdued day. The people said nothing. There was no commotion. Who knows what went through their hearts on that day? But a struggle then began, a struggle for the reclamation of a people, for the reclamation of our humanity, for the reclamation, in fact, how would you call it? We insisted upon it. At last, we were able then to be human beings and to begin the journey that took us to independence in 1978. And what a journey it was. So it was on that day, on the 1st of August, 1834, after a long battle, a struggle, because slavery was wrong. It was wrong in its essence. It was wrong in its meaning. It was wrong according to scripture, which the very people who practiced the enslavement of others came preaching. I have come to preach liberty to the slaves. Didn't Jesus say that in St. Luke? When he first made his speech, proclaimed his mission in life on this earth. This is what he said: I have come to proclaim freedom to the enslaved. So that was a deeply significant day in our history, because legally we had climbed a milestone, and that had been as a result of an incredible struggle, beginning with our people themselves. Almost from the very start, Dominica was a land of maroons. Even before the English came here, 100 years before the English came. Because the English and the French declared, and the Spanish declared Dominica a no man's land because of the Calinagos. This was their last stronghold. They forced the settling invaders with such a maleficent intent. They forced them. They held them back for 100 years throughout the 17th century, until both sides had declared Dominica a no man's land. And during that century, when Dominica was declared a no man's land, up to about 1763, when it became part of the British Empire, there was no government, no colonial government in Dominica. The Calinagos were for example, in Berwickwa in Grand Bay. That is where that is one of their towns, their villages.
Brother Wilshire, can I just crave your indulgence there just for 2 minutes, please, just for us to do some other things before we really go deep with you, because I suspect you are so passionate about that situation where we were emancipated as Black people from our colonizers. And then you're at high speed already, as it were. But it's a program that we want the people out there to interact with us as well. So the numbers to call people, they are 615-9470, just in case you want to call to say something, ask a question, or make a comment or two. Again, the numbers, they are 615-9470 and 245-2396. These are the numbers that you can get us here live on Facebook and YouTube. Remember, the program is streamed live on Facebook and YouTube. We also want to touch some of you already in the listening and viewing audience, at least by name. And your duty tonight, folks, like always, is to share the live. Make some persons know that we're having that discussion tonight about us as Black people. So, Brother Alvin will share that list together, and then we'll get back to Brother and we'll share in just a while. But we have Janice Jacques is watching. Dorian, Charles, Everlasting Peter, Dave Bertrand, Lauren Lestrade, Norma Ito, Jane Faswa, Everlasting Peter, Clive Gregoire, Nixie Alfred, Lynn Loda Jack. She said she's cute. Alvin Oliver, not Alvin, sorry, Carol Olivachi Bruni. You're glued in as well. Yusika Isles, Chiquito Thomas, Dei Jojo, Alan Pierre. Well, Alan Pierre, that is Judith Cochran. Catherine George, good evening to you. Catherine said she got the notification tonight and she was wondering whether if it is Sunday. Catherine, it's a special edition of Civic Vibes. All right. Brother Alvin, please.
We have Chris Boguno,
yes.
Chris Boguno, Santia Tia, Elizabeth Douglas, Chiquito Thomas. I think you mentioned Catherine George already, Aileen Pierre, Judith Cochran, yes, Lynn Loda Jack. Oh yes, well, you did mention Dave Bertrand, always there. On point.
Cheryl Bernadette Garraway, Elizabeth Douglas, and we have some folks on YouTube as well. So those of you on YouTube, please tune in. And
absolutely.
To the
I think the word is getting wrong, and they're coming in as we speak.
Yes, but please, folks, share the live. Remember, we are here tonight, a special edition as we acknowledge the significance of today being August 1st, 2023. We heard about 189 years ago that this act took place. And so we are still commemorating, we are still celebrating that day. Brother Wilshire,
but before the lofty, let's use that term, Emancipation Day. That's important.
Indeed.
That's what it is, Emancipation Day. And I guess as the conversation develops, we will be asking the question, are we emancipated physically, mentally, or spiritually? Where are we in 2023? We may have been emancipated in 1834 physically from slavery, but are we still in a mental state of time, as Bob Marley sang a couple years ago? So I just thought I want to put that in.
And sadly as well, we didn't hear, or we are not hearing much of we being an emancipated people of later, where we are not hearing that again. Hence, Brother Wilshire's presence tonight. Brother Wilshire, yes.
That is why, Lofty, it is so important. And that is a reason why we're having that discussion. Because something is happening. Something is happening to us. Something is happening to our country that ought not to happen. And if we don't stop it, if we don't stem it, we will reach a point of no return and we will become history. Because you see, but we can fight it. We can beat it. We can overcome, because we have a history of overcoming. Our whole history, the meaning of our history is what it means to overcome. Because from the very beginning, when the Africans were brought here enslaved and almost blinded and naked, there were some of them who had the human spirit of intrepidity to take themselves away from slavery and to make it to the hills of Dominica, a totally strange land to them, like Jacko.
Mm-hmm.
He was in a plantation for 3 days when he ran away. Not just strange. This must have been a nightmare of a place. Pure jungle. Dominica was wild. It was wild even in my childhood, let alone 200 years ago. But they came here and they decided that they would never be slaves. When we were children, the English used to make us sing a song. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat, yeah, we wept when we remembered Zion, for those who had kept us enslaved desired of us a song. But how can we sing the Lord's song in the strange land? We had to sing, Britons never, never shall be slaves. Rule Britannia, Britannia rule the waves. Britons never, never shall be slaves while we were enslaved. But those people fought, Lofty, the Maroons, Jacko, Bala. And not just men, but women, Zabet. And they fought against the plantation system to end slavery until in 1791, they tried to make a revolution in which Farcel was supposed to come from Colliho and join up with, what's his name from Martinique? And drive, I cannot remember his name now exactly, it will come in a minute. And drive the whites down to the sea and make Dominica an island of freedom as in Haiti. What Toussaint had done. But it didn't happen. And in 1814, the last battle of the Maroons were fought. The whites couldn't defeat them. The whites controlled the towns and the lower parts of Dominica. But the blacks, the Maroons, those who resisted slavery, controlled the hills, the interior of the island. Until one administrator had to say that Dominica, the Maroons were an imperium in imperio, a state within a state.
Wow.
That is the extent to which the blacks, the spirit of the African, the spirit of mankind, not just African, the spirit of humanity in a black skin. That is how we would put it. The spirit of humanity that was able to fight against the worst adversity. Many were killed, but many had the courage. And even those who were compelled to remain on the plantations, the vast bulk of our people who were held by violence and force, did many things to undermine the system and to resist in the best way that they could, until 1834, when a movement with white people now, English people, church people, clergymen, mostly Methodists, John Wesley, Wesleyans. These are people who had formed something called an anti-slavery society. And you've heard of William Wilberforce and Grenville Sharp. William Wilberforce is a name that we all taught. But these were the white people whose consciences would not allow them to allow slavery to continue. And there was a mighty battle throughout the 18th century that came to a head in 1831. The blacks in Jamaica revolted. In 1791, some 40 years before, Toussaint Louverture had driven the French out of Haiti. And all these things coming together compelled, and their economic system because slavery was no longer, it was the time when industrialization was coming in, when machines were coming in, when people were making cloth with machines and making all sorts of other things with machines, and the factories were coming in. And slavery and sugar, anyway, they could get sugar from beet in other parts of Europe. The slave system began to crumble from all sides. From all sides. And in 1834, typical of the English, clever people, you know, they decided, you know what? This thing is going nowhere. It has no further future. And therefore, let us get out of it. So they were compelled. It wasn't without a great struggle. For 30 years, motion after motion had come to the House of Commons to free the slaves. And for 30 years, they were always rejected. In the meantime, our people in Dominica, their whole future was blighted. Their whole being, their whole whatever they were there for the pleasure and for the help, the development of the European masters. Themselves didn't matter. They died in droves. The life expectancy of a slave, a field slave, was 7 years in the height of slavery. And what actually happened was that the slave masters had no interest other than to work the slaves to death to make up their money. But that system then came to an end, partly from the dreaming of our own people. Year after year had dreamt that one day they would be free. And came that August morning in 1834, August the 1st, when the proclamation was read, yes, you are no longer slaves. Imagine what that should mean to those people. And from then on now, another kind of set of development proceeded to where we are today. From our people, one wanting to have a piece of land because they had nothing at all. Do you know, immediately the day after slavery, the administrator went around the island and read in his proclamation, reminded the people that not even the huts they lived in belonged to them. So they were free, but what did freedom really mean? They still had to go and work. So the whole thing was a conflict between the slaves wanting more freedom and the white European ex-slave masters and plantation owners wanting more labor. And out of that came a whole set of movement from people wanting in the late 19th century, 20th century, people wanting now to talk about more rule, more home rule, more rights in their own country, largely from the mulattoes in the town who were largely the most educated people. But in 1951, things had reached the point where every man in Dominica over the age of 21 would get the vote, and the government could not be made without the consent and the will of the people. And in 1978, we joined this great movement of the world and became an independent country. So
okay, yes. So I was saying, based on what you laid down there for us so far, that date, the 1st of August, in our time, it is a very significant date. It is a very significant time. And so when we speak of emancipation or Emancipation Day, then that is all wrapped up in the conversation tonight, and it's some sort of unpacking we'd want to do tonight. And Brother Wilshire, thank you very much for taking time off your schedule and coming to help us unpack that all important topic, emancipation. Thomas, any further thoughts from you, sir?
Yeah, very, very great, very interesting perspective and context, as always, from Brother Wilshire. We're not surprised at that. And like we always say, you always have to give the context of the conversation. You can't just discuss it in some sort of abstract.
True.
What is the context? And I like the point that he made. He says, we have a history of overcoming, and I will add the word courage. We people have a history of overcoming and of courage. And I guess later on again, we'll explore that a little further and see to what extent that history of overcoming or that courage is still within us as Black people. And interestingly, he made the point, even long before 1834, during the Christmas holidays of 1831, there was a large-scale revolt in Jamaica. And like he mentioned, that was led by, it started off as a peaceful protest, peaceful demonstration, led by a minister by the name of Samuel Sharp. That's in 1831. And as a result of that, the British Parliament had an inquiry as to, boy, things are looking a little shaky, what we got to do? And coming out of that, you had what was called the Slavery Abolition Act of 1833. 1833. Now, even then with that Slavery Abolition Act of 1833, not every slave was freed. It's only if you were 6 years and under you were freed. Anybody above that would fall into what they considered apprenticeship. And again, they categorized that. They had apprenticeship 1, level 1, if you want to say, apprenticeship 2, apprenticeship 3, based on where you fall. And that's why sometimes you hear the term being used, the house slave and the field slave. Because if you were the house slave, you had a little more privilege than if you were the field slave. But interestingly now, in 1834, on that same 1st of August in 1834, while the governor was addressing some folks in Trinidad, Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago, guess who? Some elderly people started chanting and saying, no, no, not 6 years, not 6 years, because the governor was again trying to keep that apprentice thing in place and just allow those under a certain age to be free. They said, no, 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 until a resolution was passed and to allow for full abolition of everybody. 1st August, 1984. All man and jack were abolished. And I'm saying all of that to say that look at that courage.
1834, you said
1834, I'm sorry, yeah, 1834. Look at that courage and that history of overcoming. Elderly women in 1834. Protesters in 1831. And bear in mind, Lofty and Bernard will agree to that. These are folks, all they had was their bare hands, you know. They had no guns, they had nothing. They were on a plantation and they know of the consequences, mark you. Yeah. They know if they tried to do that, what the consequences would be. So here we are now, 1st of August, 2023. How much of that courage and that overcoming that we have in us as a people?
Yeah,
well,
Bernard,
$1 million question.
Yeah, thank you, Alvin, for that multi-million-dollar question. But what I would really like to ask of Bernard now, it is to sort of take us back where the slaves were on their land in Africa doing the do, and then, you know, these white folks, these mulattoes, these white people came to. Yes.
Lofty, I wouldn't want to go back there. Let's not go back there. Let's move forward.
Because
important.
I have a question here. I have a question here that basically said, or is asking, can Bernard Wilshire, that is on a private WhatsApp message, can Bernard Wilshire put some flesh or put some meat on the brutality from Africa to that part of the world, the Caribbean region?
Well, yes, it's well known. I mean, that is why I was saying that slavery was just wrong. It was just wrong in every shape or form. But economic interests, money, wealth, power would lead some people to do anything. And even to turn their own religion, which was supposed to be based upon love your neighbor as yourself. Do not do unto others as you would not have them do unto you. They were teaching that to us. Or they were proclaiming that, while at the same time they were living that other life. I mean, it was schizophrenic. And actually, slavery liberated not just the Africans. Actually, we should also talk about the emancipation of the whites too. It emancipated the Europeans as well. They talk as if it's only a gift to the Africans. They don't realize how much they themselves were liberated from their own hell. And yes, the atrocities, the brutalities were incredible. I mean, when they killed Bala, they were not just satisfied with killing him, up in the hills. They shot him. They took him down to town and they cut him in 4 pieces.
They cut Bala in 4 pieces, you say?
Cut his body in pieces and 4 pieces. When it hung, there's an expression, somebody I'm sure is listening, well, something and quartered. Well, the quartered is what they do. That's how barbarous they were. Wow. And of course, the treatment of the Maroons was terrible. I mean, the treatment of slaves was shocking. And there were many inquiries in England. Dominica featured among them because of the brutality of the brutality of the whites in Dominica, especially those who lived in the towns. Of course, they were very much afraid of the fact that they were in the minority. There were 14,000 blacks in Dominica at the emancipation to what? About 3,000 whites, is that many? You understand? So they were always living in fear, plus the fact that Dominica had this long history, don't forget, of our people being, I mean, really, I don't know since when Dominicans became so tame as I've seen them in recent years. We're a fierce, strong people, And the island, they look at Dominica, look at the mountain, look at the hills, the robustness, the whole environment. An English guy came here to me and came here from England. And I hadn't even noticed it. He said, but you can see all those guys, all those young guys, all of them big bulging muscles. You understand? This is the kind of land we lived in, we came in. And our people responded to that. But the cruelty of the whites, the old market in Roseau. In fact, that old market there, if you go there, you'll see the old red gazebo, the old red thing that looked like a phone box in the old market. Take care if they remove that, because that is standing over a well. That old market is where they used to buy and sell us, our people. And that what the court was there, and from there they hang the gallows was nearby, and they take them straight from the court straight to the gallows to hang them. So yes, that well in the middle of Roseau, the people stopped drinking from it because they said it was polluted by the blood of too many blacks, too many Maroons. That well that you see there. That well is of great symbolic value, interestingly enough, but our people don't know our history. And I was going to come up to from slavery to now, because one of the things in meaning of our history is the fact that we actually came to inherit the land.
Brother Wilshire, in terms of the exact pinpointing location-wise of that well that you spoke of in the market, can you just give a little more detail, just in case some persons may not know where that is?
You cannot miss it. There's a red thing in the market, just by the Garaway side.
Okay.
Of the market, straight near the old streets.
So that's the old market we're talking about.
The old market, yes. And if you go in there, you'll see that there's a red little gazebo, a little phone thing, and on top, it's standing on top of where the well was. There's still a well there. There's still water there, you know. We can restore that well. We can restore that well. In fact, I was just coming on to what happened in our history. Because you see, from 1951, we had the vote. Then in the 1950s,
Bernard most likely dropped off. As to
we lost him.
We lost him. Folks, we apologize for the breaking intermission, as it were, losing our featured speaker tonight, Bernard Wilshire. But let us hope we can get him back by he logging back and continue that conversation with us. All right. We apologize again on his behalf. Alvin.
But I think so far the conversation is very interesting. And I think the point that he was getting to, as he said a while ago, was to bring us up to speed to where we are. And like I said in the opening comments that I made, if you don't know your history, I mean, look what he just explained there as it relates to the well. How many young people knows that?
Exactly.
And would just feel, well, let's just or even the government, the authorities might say, let's just destroy that. Let's remove it and let's build a big concrete jungle there.
But Alvin, if it's not people like Bernard that keep mentioning that ever so often, we are not hearing that anywhere else.
Exactly, that's the point.
So very little importance is placed on that part of our history.
I mean, you're not able to appreciate what you have.
Yeah,
but
I think
Bernard is back with us.
Yes. Boy, and so I'm coming up to the 1960s, because you see the 1950s, I was mentioning low black, easy low black. Because that Labour Party, the Labour Party, which has been hijacked by the enemies of the Labour Party, unfortunately. You want 20 dime. Ever yo hale boyoy. They disemboweled the Labour Party. That Labour Party was formed by E.C. LeBlanc and that whole generation of the 1950s. It was part of that whole movement, and the Labour Party represented the deep aspiration, the longing of the people to take part in the political process. So that party has very deep roots in Dominica, because it was a party of the masses. And they found in LeBlanc the ideal kind of man, really. He was, I mean, you had to know LeBlanc. I only met him a few times, but he really represented something deeply decent about Dominicans, about Dominica. He was a man that was full of compassion. You spoke to him. You know, one day I invited him I invited the university to make him a director of the university center when I was extramural tutor. And I'll never forget when I was going on about the young man full of impatience and so on, going on about Maynard and them. You know, he said to me, he says, "You're a young man. Let me give you one piece of advice. Whenever you are in any conflict, you find yourself in any conflict with anybody or any situation, always leave a little room for reconciliation."
Very profound indeed, eh?
You understand? That was the kind of man that he was. Always leave a little room. And he said to me once, you must stoop to conquer. I'll never forget those words. He said other things to me. I've treasured them greatly. But he brought out of Dominicans himself and C.C. Codero, luckily, that group of people, that generation, that brought out a sense of the culture of Dominica. The what we ate, the re-thinking of Bel Air, the Jinping, I mean, a lot of that came in with Leblanc, especially after the 1967 thing when Dominica became self-governing. But that period, in a sense, was in keeping with where Dominicans, with the trajectory that Dominicans as a people were going. In 1974, unfortunately, 1974, Leblanc left, and all kinds of different reasons. And Patrick John became Prime Minister of Dominica, and young men, especially urban from Roseau, those areas, didn't have that deep root, that deep connection, especially with the rural, because that is where the real depth of Dominica really is. You know, is in the rural areas, in the countryside, in the country parts. That is where that real essence of Dominica is. And they didn't have that, Patrick and them. And they're doing exactly what Skerrit is now doing. Skerrit is just now taking it up to a high level until Patrick found himself making a deal with a guy called Don Pearson, a white man who wanted to trade to beat the embargo of oil against South Africa and wanted to use Dominica as probably the transshipping point to bring oil to South Africa. And Patrick made an agreement with this man to give him the whole north of the island, and to have, he would have sovereign power. He would be able to take people's land, just as government can actually requisition your land. This man was given in the contract the right to do that. A Labour party whose slogan was for the little man. And that gave the old established bourgeoisie in Dominica, headed by Eugenia Charles, her chance. You understand? We were young, we were red, the people didn't understand us. Myself, Rosie, Afi, Para, Joey, and guys like that. The people didn't really understand us because we were too radical for them. But we were carrying that whole tradition going right back. Our feet were planted way back in the revolt, in the resistance to oppression, because we hadn't yet overcome. We may be in letters, as Brother Alvin said, we may be emancipated in legal terms, but in reality, we will need a whole heap of reparations, to repair that damage that was done to us. And then you came to that period of Eugenia Charles, the Labour Party fell apart, and the bourgeoisie got their opportunity back again. The first thing that Eugenia did was, in fact, to end what she called death duties. Under the old colonial law and under the law as we had then, if you had a lot of land, a great deal of land, and you were doing absolutely nothing with the land. Land was just there. A lot of it was in Dominica, and nobody could use it. And people were just crowded in parts of the country that were not really usable for agriculture. There was a law which actually said that you had to pay death duties when you die on what you leave behind. And since some people could not pay it, that land then got back into the hands of the government, which enabled the government then to redistribute that land back to the people. That was a very progressive, Eugenia cut that off. because she was a great landowner. So she showed, and it was the time of Margaret Thatcher and Reagan in America, and when capitalism is whole idea that if you give rich people, you make people richer, and some people rich, then their cup will flow over, and what is flowed over will in fact, most of the people will in fact get something. That is what they call trickle-down economics, which President Biden has now said is a load of rubbish. But that ruled the world in those days. And then Eugenia, she was, as I said, she brought Dominica back. She was an anti-labor person. And it was an anti-labor class. And it was a betrayal of the labor elite, the rulers and leaders of the labor movement, their betrayal of the people that gave Eugenia her chance, the Freedom Party's chance. The Freedom Party then represented the go-boobs of Dominica. You understand? And then you had very brief interlude of Edison James when he became prime minister. And now that was a very interesting, I wonder these days we will write the history of Dominica, but that Edison James period, the banana children, the people who had in fact benefited from that whole banana boom that had started in the 1960s and blossomed in the 1970s, which on the one hand brought the people a great deal of money, but on the other hand, actually began the wholesale ecological destruction of Dominica. And that is something to be discussed, but there's no forum to discuss those things one way or another. And we have to, so now the question is, how then, given our history, do we find ourselves back on track? With National Day doesn't even have any meaning anymore. Independence doesn't, Lofty, and anybody listening to me knows that we are in deep decadent decline in this island. Our society is decadent and is declining. Our people are leaving, and worse still, we have reached the point where we've made our main policy to sell, to vendre, nous fin. So nous decide nous aller vendre ba étranger, nous pas mêler qui moun yo ye, yo sa criminel, yo sa escopel, yo sa sayole, nous pas mêler. Depuis ani banou l'argent, ani oli l'argent. Men anyway. C'est tout ça nous détend compte. C'est l'argent. And the money, by the way, the l'argent does not come in. Most of this money has gone into foreign hands, into the hands of a small foreign elite. That is why the EU has now insisted, and I believe they read my advice, that is why they've now insisted that the money must come to the country. The money, if you want to sell any passport, that money must come inside the country first. What this Kerrit was doing was giving Anthony Hayden a completely illegal thing. He was allowing this man to sell passports around the world and for the money to come directly into his account. So we know nothing about how much money this Anthony Hayden has actually made. We know nothing about that. And he's never gone to Parliament and given Parliament a report as he's supposed to in law. He's never done that. You understand? And we've now reached the point where we are selling the country that Bala, that Jacko, that our ancestors fought so hard to give us, where we were masters. We had a little piece of land. The compensation for 400 years of suffering and slavery bequeathed to us by the sweat, the toil, the tears of our ancestors. Nothing now is sacred to us. And because of that, we are on our way out. You may not even hear my voice. I expect you might not even hear this. Most And in fact, most of them are not even listening anyway. So they're not even hearing it. It's not even part. The government, the first of all, has the government put out a statement about what this should mean to us? We fought for this land, and the man without our consent is now selling it to foreign. How many passports has he sold? What he's selling is citizenships to all kinds of escamotes around the world. Zoni escamote ici, zopé yo. Et va zopé escamote qui plus mauvais, ou yon million fois plus mauvais que yo. And all sorts of people this man has gone to sell our citizenships and reduce them until they're not with hanyo. He's turned our citizenship into trash. For what? We have sold our birthright for a mess of pottage. And all you talk about, all you reading Bible, which damn Bible are you reading? The Bible is there, it is right there, the lessons are there. Why don't you take notice of it? Why don't you take the notice of Esau and his brother? When they came for his birthright, it was too late. He had sold it for a bowl of soup, which is what we are doing. This is why kudos to Ralph Gonzalez in St. Vincent. And look at Ralph. Ralph is an ancestry, not even African, mostly European. But I'm proud of you, Ralph, not to go down the road of this scary and what is that other chap in these unworthy people. This man in Antigua and in those other places, what are they doing? Selling their country for a mess of pottage. And in Dominica, there's no guideline, there's no law. People don't even know. This is our country. And if we're going to be creating thousands of new citizens, we ought to have a say in it. Where is your pride? Where is the pride that animated so many of our people? The kind of men who, after the war, who went to Curacao, who went to Aruba, who went to Cuba, they worked so hard. The RBD Douglases, the Pilot Hewlett Johns in Grand Bay. There were these what men in every village in Dominica. You had these men of substance who'd worked and built a country and built themselves on their own self-sufficiency. Today, there's no agriculture. The man has destroyed agriculture completely. He's completely neglected agriculture, and the people are just there. And the one industry that we actually had, the industry that at Ross, the man actually blithely, Sakwe Sotla, and got the industry completely lost and taken to Barbados. After 40 years of investment, Mike Douglas and even Eugenia would have turned in their graves. And then the people of Portsmouth went and actually voted for that man again. So all these things are related, Alofti. To understand Dominica and to understand our mission, because that is what we are lacking. That national spirit is gone, is going. I don't know if it's completely gone. You tell me if we've reached the point of no return. But the national spirit is going. There is no sense of identity, which is necessary. If any community is to survive, especially in this world of huge conglomerates, if you have no sense of identity, and you're easily just diluted and gone away and drifted away. And now you're actually selling, but it's no. All I said new year. Pantek nous. All I said new year. You can sell a few passports, my friend, as an icing upon the cake, but you have to have an econ. And look at what has happened now. Now the passports have threatened the very countries that for whom these people, because of whom these people want to buy these passports. It is to go to England, it is to go to America, it is to go, and they used to go through Canada. They cannot go to America. You must have a visa thing now, make a visa application. The Canadians, who were part of the Commonwealth, we could go there how we wanted. Now they've put visa restrictions, partly through the Americans, but partly tens. How many Chinese? One set of about 30 Chinese, I understand, came one time, all of them with Dominican passports, and these people knew that these were not real Dominicans. These are economic citizens. You understand? So our whole sense of who we are, our national sense of identity has been badly affected by this policy. It must end. And as a result of this policy, this government has become so lazy. That is why they don't give a damn about any, they don't want to work. These guys don't work. Which work? Where do they do the work? Parliament meets how often? What does it do? What do they do in between parliaments? Virtually nothing. They travel abroad and do what? What has actually happened to our national sense of national identity? Because that is tied up to our history. And if we don't have that, Lofty, Alvin, if we lose that, then we lose everything. And that is a complex thing for people to understand. It is not easy to understand. And therefore, the ordinary man, and nothing has been done to prepare the ordinary man to think like that. That is why what actually prevails in Dominica now is dysfunctionality, divisiveness, every man's hand against every man, every man. The thing is not to help your neighbor, but to better your neighbor. If you see anybody rising, not to pull them down. They mustn't rise above you. They will leave you behind. And those who can and get the who have, who don't have, who have, who don't have, the barking dogs.
Lord have mercy. We'll show you what you must enter the Kaisu competition next year, man.
Is that where we arrived at? Is that where we arrived at? After 189 years, look at the guides, look at our people in roads, oh my God. Look at some of our people on the roadside. Look at the condition, the human condition of our people. That is how it was in the days of slavery. Look at some people I don't understand how some people, this man is on this roadside totally in black, something that absorbs heat. I go to him sometimes, I said, don't you feel hot? And some of our people don't say, people lying down on the roadside like dogs. Where is our dignity? Who cares about these people? Where is this Christian thing about so long as you care about the least of them, so long as you do what you do to the least of them, you've done to me? Where is that? And what are the churches saying about it? Oh, what a disgrace. The church is a disgrace. All of them. The intellectuals of the country are a disgrace. The government is a disgrace. The opposition itself is a disgrace. No one is planning for Dominica. Where is the plan? That is what is required. That is what emancipation should say to us. Has the government made any statement about emancipation? No. Oh, I haven't heard it. Have you heard it, Lofty?
Not at all. Not at all.
Not at all. Don't you think our people's attention should be drawn to such an event? Don't you think our people, for the sake of our own corporeality, for the sake of our own wholeness, our own sense of identity, for the sake of showing what we've all got together, what binds us together, that long history. That long history of suffering and striving and dreaming and hoping and working. Where is that? Dead. Our young people are sitting on the roadside dead. And what is the government's answer? An NEP, with our young people being offered to cut grass on the side of the road. What is the future in that? And even that, by the way, would be threatened if the CBI program is ended. Even that. And instead for our people to become free and vibrant and independent, what has actually happened, Lofty? The man is herding our people in these soon-to-be unsavory houses, blocks. What an idiot. All countries have tried this method of housing, have run away from that. It leads to slums. It leads to social dysfunction. It leads to fighting and quarreling among the neighbors. It leads to drugs, especially if they're not maintained. Especially if they're not maintained, they fall into disrepair. And very soon they turn into slums. And it's drug lords alone who will control them. And then that becomes a real serious problem, a serious social problem for whichever government is there. That is a short-sightedness and illiterate ignorance of the kind of policy that led to this. You know what they did in Cuba and in Jamaica? If this man had simply asked for advice, people might have told him, and it's a very simple thing he could have done. Very simple thing he could have done. Instead of having this Hayden Wizard, I don't know, this man is breaking our laws. That's the first thing. This man is breaking our law. He's breaking the law of the country. No money should go to Anthony Hayden's private escrow account without accounting to the people through the parliament for the use of that money. You understand? That is what our constitution says, Lofty. I think that's section 56. That is what the law that controls our budget and our money, that is what that law says. And for a very good reason. So we've come all this way. That is why this date is important. That is why we should keep, Fidel, I had the privilege of meeting Fidel. And one of the things, myself and Rosie, and one of the interesting things, I noticed about Fidel, and Michael Manley told me the same thing about him. Michael thought this was Fidel's strength. Fidel's use of the symbolism of his history. That binds. When he talks about Jose Marti and all the other Cuban greats, he ties them all in a fable, in a narrative. In a narrative that the people, at least the majority of the people, can understand and can chime with. That is the only way you're going to have a small community like Dominica. I'm going to shut up, Lofty, because that is what I'm going to say. That is my bit. And I said that for our ancestors as well as to the generation, our present generation. And I say that also, I speak also for the rights of the future generations of Dominicans.
True. Brother Wilshire, very spellbounding accounting that you give in there about our history and about our present day situation. It's very, very interesting to hear you in that mood, in that fashion tonight. I took note of a couple points. There are some questions on the live feed. I know Alvin want to ask you certain questions as well, or say certain things. But first things first, I took note specifically when you said that Brother Hayden, the man who is in control of our dollars, our resources as it were in the country, what he is doing is illegal. You
Yes.
being a legal mind, Brother Wilshire, what would you recommend be done by the
That
people of
the matter
Dominica?
be taken to court, that the citizens come together, that they take the matter to court, that they get some lawyers together, they take the matter to court. It is a big matter. It is the question about this matter is does the government have the right to spend any money, any public money that is not first approved by Parliament? That is the first question. The government does not have that right. Any money that the government spends must be approved by Parliament. It must form part of the estimates, and it must form part of a law which the government will pass after Parliament has agreed the estimate for the various things that they have to do. I want the government to tell me where in the estimates they can show me that they've actually put in the billion, the hundred. First of all, how much money has been spent on housing? Do you know? Is that public knowledge? How much money has it cost? How much money has Anthony Hayden taken? How much has been paid to him? That is a direct matter of great importance, because this is public money. The constitution of the country says that any money that is raised by Dominica must be put in the consolidated fund, unless the government has passed a law which allows the money to be put in some other form. The government passed a regulation which sets up escrow accounts. But the government, first of all, I believe that that is not lawful. But secondly, the government there's no provision in that law for accounting for the use of that money. How much money is spent? How much money is paid to Anthony Hayden? What is the contract worth? How many passports has he sold? How much money has he raised? That is why the EU is now saying that the money sold for passports must go directly into the consolidated fund of the government. And out of that, the government can pay Mr. Hayden. That is what, in fact, is the law. But the government has broken the law. And they've broken the law by allowing Anthony Hayden to raise his money up front. He probably got on some market or I don't know where he got it. He got his money up front. He builds the houses and he reimburses himself from the sale of passports. You understand what is happening to us? This is illegal. And the government must account for every penny raised by those passports. They must tell us how many people, give us the names of every single person who in fact has bought a passport since 1991 or 1993 when it started. And don't forget, it started with that evil woman, Eugenia Charles. I know Dominicans don't think so. But if they lose the country, her act of selling this passport, she was the one, she changed the constitution just by one little line to say that people don't have to reside in Dominica to become a citizen of Dominica. So she was then enabled, and that is illegal. I don't believe that she had the constitution gives her the right. I don't think the constitution gives the government the right to turn the selling of passports into a wholesale industry. I don't think so. And that should be challenged. You shouldn't let Mrs. Carriage is a young man, bon Dieu. Mr. Poko m'a tweeté. The man is a young man. The man has no knowledge of life. He's not been through any adversity. This man has never been in opposition. He knows nothing of the travails of life, the strife of life. He knows nothing of that. He has not been tempered. And I don't know how much he knows of our history. But he certainly doesn't seem to, in his 20 years, he certainly has not showed any capacity for building a nation of this people. of this community. And that may be his greatest failing. That's what I have to say, Lofty.
Alvin, thank you very much, Brother Wilshire. Alvin.
Well, a lot to unpack. I share some of the comments that Bernard has made, in so far as the matter of challenging some of this matter in the courts. I mean, it was just Sunday, this past Sunday, on our Civic Vibe program, you heard me, where I said that we still have to have a certain degree of faith in the judicial system. We can't throw everything out. We can't say, well, the legislature is bad, the governor is bad, the court is bad, so what are they left with? So I believe some of those matters can be challenged, and he's absolutely right. As someone who spent quite a number of years in the audit department during my public service career, there is what I refer to again, as I said, as the Finance Administration Act that mandates and stipulates clearly how government funds should be collected and expended, as well as the Audit Act and various financial regulation and financial stores regulations. So all of those are creatures or how should I say, they are part of the Constitution. They are an act of Parliament, and as such, we have to be guided by that. It takes me to the whole question of governance, law and governance. When you have a government, a country where there is no governance, where there is no law, not that there is no law, but there is no upholding of the law, then that's what you have. But I think what Bernard is saying, and if I get his drift, is that as we observe Emancipation Day today, August the 1st today, August the 1st today is Emancipation Day, and 189 years ago, in 1834, we were emancipated from slavery, from bondage, where we became a free individuals, free to think for ourselves, free to do whatever it is we want to do for ourselves. And here we are today in 2023 in some kind of bondage by Anthony Hayden that has our money in bondage by our own government, where we can speak as we want, we can walk as we want, we can protest as we want, we can raise issues as we want. And that, to me, I think is the challenge that we have moving forward. The question remains, and this is what I want to pose to Bernard. How do we change it? And would it be true to say that if the young folks are not aware of the history, that somehow we, the older ones, have failed them in that we have not made it available? Or is it a question that they don't want to absorb it? I mean, where do we strike that balance? Where do we say mea culpa? I mean, are we there, or is there some missing parts that we need to bring together?
We're a little cog in a great wheel. We are very, very small cog. In fact, you know the idea of the periphery, the edge. We are the edge of the edge. We're the periphery of the periphery. That is where Dominica has always been. Actually, that is not a bad place to be today. The man wants to put an international airport, mash up the whole of Wesley, and do the greatest ecological damage, put the country in the greatest debt, to put an international airport that would open up Dominica in a way that cannot be of benefit to the people of Dominica. It will only lead to more domination of the people. That is what will actually happen. There was another way. Dominica's history, in ways, the place where Dominican most unique in the Caribbean. Most Dominican today have a piece of land of their own. This is not like Barbados and those other places.
Absolutely.
Independence you need, far from the man. I mean, this man is mad. Any government would have known that agriculture must be food security, and agriculture must be our number one priority. It must be a number one priority because we cannot depend upon buying food from external forces for all kinds of reasons, apart from the fact it's so damn expensive. But there's a great deal that can be done to support the ordinary people, the farmers. That is where, if that CBI money had to go anywhere, that is where it should have gone. Not into the millions and millions to give Nassif money to go and build Secret Bay. Yes, he's made a great hotel. I have nothing wrong with that. But he has Fort Young as well, and you give now money to go and clean Secret Bay. You give individuals this money to build all these things. But tourism is tourism only really, it makes more money than agriculture, but it only really caters for a small section of the population. Agriculture is the one industry that is going to cater for the vast majority of your people. And that is where you needed to have sunk money. If you're going to sell the country, you should have given the people not a house, a flat. Yes, they can have a place. The way you should have built the house is not to build flats on top of people. Give the people the materials, let them build the house themselves with technical advice from the government and help from the government and with help from their community in a Kudme manner, on their own piece of land, with their own backyard. That is what could have been done. That will strengthen the sense of independence of our people, of self-sufficiency, because at least they'll be able to grow something, a cabbage or carrot in the backyard. What the hell can you grow when you're usi span on the flat on top of how many people, on top of you, and you're on top of how many people? In a country with so much land, with such a small population. It is madness. It is stupidity. It is lack of experience. It is lack of maturity.
So Bernard, so the question I ask again, have we, I know you've been in the vineyard working, and many others. Do you feel that there's more you could have done, or you have not others like yourself? I mean, how do we get our young people now to resonate with that message?
I told the opposition, all opposition forces in Dominica, all the people who are opposed to the present madness and nonsense that is going on should come together in a new dispensation, not a UWP, but a party with a new name, a united party, a coalition of groups, of all groups, including UWP. Including UWP. And they should come together and work out a program for Dominica and something. Are you listening? Are you there?
Yes, we are right there. We are right there listening.
Okay. And come together with a program and a plan for Dominica. Not saying scary, though good, scary this, scary that, scary this. I mean, that's what Mun last ever said. It is boring.
I agree with you 100%.
That is not what people want to hear anymore.
We know that already.
So bring everybody, come together as they did in Grenada and mount up. That is the base from which you can fight for electoral reform. What you're doing there, Lofty, is, I'm sorry to tell you, I don't want to discourage you, but that is not, you could do a lot more if you were, in fact, speaking from the platform of a united party, of a united opposition party, in which all forces, opposition forces would come together, knowing that the important priority is to remove Mr. Skerritt from there, because he is a real and present danger to the country. He's been there too long, and he has no ideas. He's a young man in a hurry. All opposition forces today should come together, and one of the demands should be electoral reform. One of the demands on the platform of that new political organization should be electoral reform. And you'd be much more powerful. First of all, you'd be united, And then you'd be able to unite the people behind you, because that is not the only thing. That is, electoral reform is not the only thing Dominicans care about. That is not even the main thing they care about. They have many more pressing problems. Problems of just how to eat, problems of how to make enough money, problems of how to get a job, problems of just how to get along, how to live from day to day, how to pay their bills. That is what the people of Dominica, that is what is troubling the people of Dominica. And that is what they want to hear. How are you going to solve that? Not just electoral reform. So that is, if you ask me how we get out of it, that is how it seems to me you should get out of it. Because that will have, it will make sufficient lavway to draw in the attention of everybody. It would be big news. And the opposition needs a big news to challenge Mr. Skerritt's nonsense. Mr. Skerritt has a group of exhausted volcanoes as his cabinet. Yo vide. Marie, yo toutouni, mais yo vide.
Bernard, you're bringing down the house tonight, boy.
Oh my God.
Bernard said a while ago, you can kisa you can platile, you can sispan.
Ini mun ka sispan. Ale fude pi pop floor. Oh my God. No, but seriously though, seriously, I think, and you see the thing about it, Bernard, is that, again, it goes back, we not knowing where we come from and what obtain, it's a challenge for us to move forward, because tomorrow, actually, is it today, is next Monday, that's the holiday, back home, Lofty? August Monday, when is August Monday?
Next week.
Next week. Yeah, next Monday.
So next Monday, you're going to have August Monday being celebrated, and everybody's going to see you, and everybody's going to have a good time, and nobody understands the significance of the August Monday, Emancipation Day. I know in Trinidad, for example, Trinidad takes that day very seriously. As a matter of fact, they were one of the first countries in the region that passed an act to observe August 1st as Emancipation Day, and they have a whole series of events that takes place to observe that. As a matter of fact, as we speak now, I think the president or somebody of Ghana, Africa, is down in Trinidad, part of the whole celebration that they're having, as well as Jamaica, as well. Barbados also has an act that recognizes the day and have a series of activity. Interestingly, in March of 2021, the Canadian House of Commons voted unanimously on a motion to recognize 1st of August as Emancipation Day across Canada. Across Canada. So,
yes,
so
it was part of the British Empire.
Exactly, they were part of the British Empire. And also St. Lucia. St. Lucia observed the day, and Antigua currently have their celebrations as well. So it's ironical that we are in Dominica now. Maybe some of us remember the day, most of us don't. And even those who remember it does not fully understand the significance of that day. And to ask ourselves that very deep question, where can I, or how can I, starting with me, be emancipated in order to emancipate and help emancipate the rest of my fellow men and my country? And I think a lot of what Bernard has mentioned tonight, and the way in which the government has treated, even with our sacred sovereignty of citizenship, clearly indicate that we are still in some form of slavery. We are not fully emancipated yet. Because here we are in 2023, our sovereignty, our citizenship is up for sale by the highest bidder, or sometimes even the lowest bidder. So there's a lot of work to be done as far as the whole emancipation and what the day signifies. And I'm so pleased that Civic Vibes could engage in that kind of conversation where we can again do what is needed and bring the knowledge and the information, not just to the folks who are there with us tonight on the feed, but to spread the word so people become a more enlightened people, a more engaged people, a more courageous people, as Bernard says, persons who had the courage and the overcoming of all the challenges of the past.
Yeah. All right, folks. Thank you very much, Brother Alvin. Thank you as well, Brother Bernard, for your fine points there tonight in terms of your delivery. It's now 20 to 9. We have been at it from 7 o'clock. So we'll take about the next 20 minutes just to bring the program to a wrap, as it will. But let us go and engage the persons now on the feed, day-to-day listening, and they are part and parcel of the conversation. That is how we want to bring down the conversation tonight, as to engage these persons. David Johnson is writing here, Loftus, this presentation of Bernard should be played at nauseam. All right, so thank you very much, Johnson, for your suggestion here. Dory Drago is asking you an all-important question here, Mr. Wilshire, to ask you, what advice do you have for our young people who are just tied up in SIWO and are blinded by self-desire? That question for you first up.
Well, you know, that's a very complex, the whole thing about what we do with the youth. And it has to begin, as I said, with don't forget, Lofty, the government of the day is regarded as the leader of the people. It is the government the people listen to. It is a government the young people listen to. When Skerrit says something, young people listen, they hear it, and they comment on it. You need a government that will speak to the young people, that can in fact commemorate things, that can draw people's attention to this Emancipation Day. So I would say that it starts with that. We should all work towards that, towards achieving a government, and demand that government in fact now go back to what Leblanc and them were trying to do. Start from there. Forget about the aberration of the Skerrit years, because that was an aberration. That is not where Dominica's history should really be taking us at all. And go back to what Leblanc and Sissi Kodor and them were trying to do in building the sense of national culture, of this sense of national image, of an image of what we are as a people. And it does require each one of us, especially those of us who are more, to engage the youth in conversation. I mean, I know it's difficult, but I think you should. I think you should engage the youth wherever you meet them, engage them in conversation.
Yeah. Another situation here, I see Alex Bruno here, and Alex Bruno is making a point here, which I want to echo to you, Brother Wilshire. He says, Bernard is making a point that some of us have been trying to make. Right now, we need a political reimagination to save our country. And he tells you, thank you very much for at least the idea that you brought out tonight. Okay. About what can be done to salvage what is left of our country.
I think that is what should happen now as a matter of urgency. Forget everybody, including the UWP. Everybody, Thompson, everybody, all political groups, all people leaning towards Mounsewier, CCM, whatever group, whatever tendency they have towards thinking about the country, bring them together. And not just groups like that, but could be community groups around the country where people are in fact concerned. I don't know. I hope that there are people around the country today. In my day, when I was a youth, I mean, we had organizations throughout Dominica of young people doing one thing or another. I mean, in Grand Bay alone, we had 17 groups in Grand Bay alone, you know. Can you imagine?
So Bernard, let me challenge you with a question based on what you just said, because you hear it said sometimes Yeah, that's a great way to start. That's a great way to go. But somebody or body's got to take the lead. And you hear the talk all the time. Well, we don't have the Bernard Wiltshire's like we had in the 70s. We don't have the Afi Martin. We don't have the Charles Savrin. We don't have the Zavuka. We don't have those persons there that will say, hey, clap their hand and say, let's go, guys, let's go get it. How do you think we can bring that together?
I think the UWP could take that initiative. I think there should be thinkers within the UWP to take the initiative and realize that things have gone beyond UWP-ism. We really need a situation where we can share power more sensibly and distribute power more evenly, and to rebuild the institutions of the country. Otherwise, we are doomed. And I think it can be done if people, the present UWP is quite capable of leading such a thing. And just realizing that you're not building another UWP, you are in fact agreeing and accepting that for the sake of the nation, let us now bring together and forget about the name. Let's not be hung up on the name UWP, because that has such a thing of baggage, and it conjures up so much things in the minds of people. And see something new, some new name, which really represents the interests of everybody who is opposed to Skerrit at the moment. And let them come together now and put together an agenda, put together a minimum program that everybody can agree to, and including electoral reform, and put a set of demands on the table for Mr. Skerrit, which he must meet immediately. Otherwise, we are going to mobilize the people in civil disobedience.
Bernard, one of the constraints to the idea that you're pushing out tonight, because I am in there, I know at least what I'm talking about now, is that there is a semblance of coming together. We have tried on a number of occasions, but this whole idea about I am in this group, I am in this party, I am in this organization, we come together for half an hour, 2 hours for the most. And then when we leave that quote unquote one united front, we go back to our base. And that is where things fall apart after. Question to you, sir, would you recommend for what you're proposing that at least these groups and party names and colors be set aside, be dissolved, be dismantled, and we, the thinkers, come up with that one name, that united front, that united approach that you're talking about, to let everybody understand that it is country now we are thinking about, and not a blue, not a black, not a green, not a white. Would you push that idea?
I think the opposition should take the lead and bring everybody together in that form. That is what I think should happen, Lofty. I think the times call for that. It is the opposition is too divided, and the opposition does not have a program.
Now, Wiltshire, I'll be very straight. Are you envisaging, as we speak, that a proposal like that, and I'm using UWP because they are one of the major forces on the ground in terms of opposition. Would you think that in your mind now, that UWP as an organization would be willing to set aside the SAW, set aside the blue, and decide to join with other forces to come under one united banner moving forward?
Frankly, I think they could. I think they could, and I think if they think about it, they would. And I hope they will.
Okay.
And enough people work on it, I think they will. I think we should talk to Lennox, we should talk to Thompson, we should talk to the leaders of the UWP, and we should say to them, look, the times demand that. And you should come with some humility. Come to some humility. Don't insist upon it is the kind of institutional egotism to insist upon that your name must be the only name. That is petty.
So I just placed UWP as a party, as an organization under the microscope as it were. Alex is there. Alex is the founder or leader of a party. We have Freedom Party, whatever is left of Freedom Party. We have other parties there as well. Do you think that these leaders of these different political parties now have what it takes to come together to set aside their stuff and come under one banner?
That is what I think. I think they should all come together. I think the UWP, Alex, everybody should come together with the help of the facilitator, with the help of somebody who understands political processes and how you actually bring disparate people who up till now were in the, how you overcome little petty fiefdoms, and how you actually create something bigger for the betterment of all. Because realizing that each one in his narrow cell forever laid can never get us anywhere. The EWP, they might win, but the truth of the matter is, even if they won, they would probably be tempted to do pretty much the same thing that Skerrit is doing in order to make money to stay in power. You understand? That is what would actually happen. They would sell passports just as much as Skerrit is selling them. So there has to be, I think, all the parties, the UWP itself, the leadership of the UWP. I think the ordinary people, ordinary UWP members would understand this. And I think they're ready for this now. I think they would accept that. I think if everybody came together, a kind of constitutional opposition meeting, conference, a constitutional opposition conference, to bring together all groups of people, Alex, whatever other groups exist, and not just political parties, by the way. It could include other people as well. It could, I mean, the CCM is as much a political party as Freedom Party. I mean, it's not a political party, but Freedom Party is, you know, and the same thing I think is true of Alex's party. At the moment, these are large names more than realities on the ground. So you have all these different groups, just individual leaders now. Bring all these people together, and there are other people, individuals also, and throughout the island, there are probably people throughout the island who are now thinking very much in that same way.
Well, as you said that there, Alvin, just stick up in, as you said that there, Ferdinand Lawrence on the live, Bernard is agreeing with you. Line hook and sinker, as you said, there are people who are thinking likewise. He says here, those who resist the idea of oneness, then let them stay aside and let's do this. That's the only idea that me personally, that is Ferdinand Lawrence, will assist with finances. The idea that you're speaking of.
I think the times call for it.
Let me ask you, Bernard. Let me ask again. Let me just play a little devil's advocate there.
Let's just engage the live feed. The live feed. We have some lively discussion coming in there because we're about to end in a while. But you can go ahead. You can go ahead.
But have you seen a formula like that work anywhere else? A formula like what you said?
I think in Grenada that's what they did. That's why they beat Michel, that young boy, and he's doing quite well, as far as I understand. And that's what they did. I think that's what you're going to have to do here.
Yes, Grenada, based on me following the political happenings in the region, something similar happened where basically everybody in the opposition circles, there was some kind of concession. A matter of fact, some persons even gave up their constituency to have other persons, take the lead and run. And then that is the only way they could edge out Mr. Mitchell, senior Mitchell for a younger Mitchell.
That's right. We can do it. We can do it. We can do it. We can do it. But Mr. Skerrit must go. He must get out of there. He's not doing anything useful anymore. And he's made a mess of the housing thing. The people are glad they have housing today. They have a place to stay, of course. Anybody would be glad for that. But what's going to happen when who's going to maintain it? People haven't even got titles to these houses. So who's going to maintain it? So,
Brother Wilshire, you spoke about not a mediator, but somebody to sort of steer, a facilitator. Yes. Who in your mind now off the cuff?
I was thinking about that. I mean, if my friend Rex Nettleford was there, I would have asked him.
Okay.
But I thought he was a person of that caliber. I think would do it. A person of that caliber. Unfortunately, it's Ramphal is too old now, probably. But there are people in the region who can do it. There are, there senior political people in the region who are very talented and who can do it, who can facilitate and realize what it is we're trying to do and steer us, help us to actually come to that situation. But I think first there has to be a willingness on the part of people like UWP and Alex and everybody and saying, look, let's all come together and let us create something new, a new coalition, a new dispensation of all opposition forces, and let us confront Mr. Skerritt for electoral reform and his use of the economy, the way he's handling himself, the way he's running his cabinet, the way he's running the government without any control, without any accountability. I mean, that is pure and utter nonsense.
But
it's 5 to 9. No, it's 5. I was just giving us an idea of the time. It's 5 to 9.
Yeah,
we will wrap up around 9 o'clock.
But again, Wilshire, just again, how do you? I know you've mentioned Skerritt a couple of times here. But how do you deal with the situation like the Anthony Hayden, who pays the pipers called the tune? And some people say, well, Skerritt is just a pawn in the whole scheme of things. He's not the one really running Dominica. Anthony Hayden is who runs Dominica. Mm. And I guess some might say even maybe the Chinese now, and Skerritt is just the pawn guy in there.
The puppets.
How do you deal with that scenario? How do we emancipate ourselves out of that?
Only a government with the will of with the backing of the will of the people can handle that. You understand? You have to have the will of the people, of Dominica, the Dominican people, with a government that expresses the national sentiment and the national aim. Only such an institution can handle that. Nobody else has the power, the strength, the ability to. And Mr. Skerritt is in the wrong place. He's taking somebody else's place. He needs to get out of there.
Someone is making a suggestion here as to one of us being a facilitator, Ozzy Lewis.
Yes, Ozzy, yeah. If Ozzy wants to take on something like that, Ozzy may be able to do that. Yeah. But I don't care. I mean, yes, Ozzy would be a good person for that. But as I said, it doesn't really matter. All what we need is a person who can actually understand the differences between people and really see where the commonalities are. Because very often when people are actually talking, sometimes they're saying the same thing, but they're arguing with one another.
True, I agree.
So you need somebody who can actually disaggregate all the different things and say, look, this is where this is what you're saying, this is where you're going, this is where we want to go, this is where you need to go, and this is the things we need to do for us to arrive at a proper conclusion in a couple of days or whatever it is. And I think that way we could actually have a new, I thought it would bring a lot of hope to all Dominicans far and wide. And it would bring a lot of hope to the youth, and the youth will be able to take notice of that. But will be big enough to catch their attention.
Yeah. Well, Brother Bernard, I want to thank you very much. It's a minute to 9 o'clock, and we have to bring down the curtains on thing here. But trust me, tonight was worth the 2 hours for sure. Tonight being the 1st of August, 2023. I personally am going to mark that date because I think conversations like that don't just happen. There's something divine that is happening somewhere, and it is just a matter for it to be materialized in our land. So brother, I want to thank you very much for at least reaching out to me earlier this afternoon and we having that conversation tonight. That conversation, based on what I'm feeling through my bones now, it is a sign or mark of good things to come for Dominica. So I just want to thank you. I'm Bernard. Alvin, we have to bring it down. So let us just hear.
Well, yeah, well, I just wanted to ask Bernard in his closing comments to leave us with a sense of hope, where he sees us going. I always like to end on a positive note. So give us a sense of hope as we close in terms of where you see us, which soon will be celebrating 50 years as an independent nation. Where do you see us going?
Dominica is a land of hope and glory. It is the most wonderful place in the world. When everywhere else is heating up, Brother Alvin, our mountains will keep us cool. When everywhere is drying, our mountains will draw clouds to give us water, of which we're rich. Our soils are verdant. We are people with a long history, a history of struggle and of overcoming adversity and difficulty. And we survived from a small little nation. Dominica was not known. Dominica is not up to now a dot on the map, but we are an independent member of the United Nations. Our Prime Minister can sit next to the President of the United States and the President of China. For our little size, we punch a big punch. We pack a big punch. We can negotiate on our own behalf. We don't have to go to Britain and ask for permission now, to do development things for ourselves. And so that is a priceless treasure that we hold, that we have, that we've arrived at as a people. And we should be proud of that and proud of Dominica, because this little island of ours is a miracle of nature. And at a time when climate change is heating up the world, is making, yes, we will have more hurricanes and more dangerous hurricanes, but we can take steps against these hurricanes. We can reinforce our buildings. And to some extent, Mr. Skerritt, give him some little credit, he's already started that process. We can continue that process until we make our people really resilient against storms. But apart from that, we can have a quality of life in this island that would be envied anywhere, especially if we become and enjoy being our brother's keeper.
This one from our brother Dice entitled Back to Country.
Lots of signs, but none so blind as he who will not see. Loyalty to party is the road to poverty. As division brought us progress, our people enjoying success. It is already late. Come, let's grab our faith and repatriate our hearts, our minds to our country urgently. Dear Dominica, my true confession is what I didn't do. I want to suffer, for my allegiance was to someone else, not you. All your exploiters, many are strangers, the patriots of you. So it's no wonder we are where we are. We did not stand with you. Whoa. Now we live with hostility, fruits of a misplaced loyalty. Now we must turn back to country first, immediately, beginning with me.
Dominica, that is the essence of the conversation we just had tonight, going back to our country. Not the political parties, not the things that divide us. What a conversation this evening on August 1st, 2023, when we are celebrating Emancipation Day in Dominica and our region. Thank you very much, Brother Wilshire, indeed.
It won't be easy, change is hard, everything has its price. But for children and country, it is worth the sacrifice. The past is past that we cannot change, but our present and future remains. Take a good look around, we have lost so much ground. Turn around, come around, your loyalty belongs.
Brother Wilshire, we're just making that song play a little while and then we'll get back to us for closing comments, all right?
My true confession is what I didn't do. I watched you suffer, for my allegiance was to someone else, not you.
All right, Dominica, let's get back to the live panel here for closing comments indeed. Alvin Thomas and Brother Wilshire, we have to go, but yes, it was indeed a splendid time tonight. Our final comments, sirs.
Bernard, are you there?
Yes, Bernard, your final comments?
Bernard.
I think Bernard internet froze. All right, Alvin, you can go ahead. If he rectifies, then he will come back in. Before we
Well,
close.
again, Lofty, like you said, I think it was a very, how should I say, interesting, but a divine intervention program. And like you said, certain things happen by divine intervention. And it's very possible that our ancestors were speaking through Bernard to us, to you, to me, that today being the 1st of August, Emancipation Day, the abolition of slavery back in 1833, 1834, that we should revisit where we are as a people. And I think the conversation was very enlightening, very enlightening. I think Brother Bernard raised a number of issues, particularly where he ended with a call for us to come together as one people. What affects one affects all. And I think we, at this juncture for history now, where we have to recognize it's beyond party and us individual egos. And what is it? How can we make Dominica a better place that all of us will benefit from? Those of us who are still in Dominica physically, and those of us who are out of Dominica, who one day want to come back home and retire in our home and relax and you know, enjoy our twilight years, if you know. So I think it was a very good program. It was very engaging, I must say. The folks on the on our live field, Brother Alex Bruno was engaging fully, Marceline Pierre, you know, Anthea Rennie, Faith Sunshine, Franklin C. Murphy.
The whole lot of folks.
The whole lot.
Yeah.
So I'm happy I was able to be part of the conversation and look forward to, hopefully by next year when we do celebrate another Emancipation Day, we would have at least be one step further to where we want to see our country, Dominica.
All right, Alvin, thank you very much indeed. Let me say as well on behalf of Civic Vibes and the many folks who were there, both live up, we could see their comments, and in the cognito mode as well. They're taking in information to Brother Doctor, rather Mr. because he's a doctor in his own right. Trust me, Dr. Bernard Wilshire, in terms of that spellbound conversation we had tonight, which I know for sure will lead us as a country in the right direction. So Dominicans, that is it. Thank you very much indeed.
Just guilty, Dominica has become this way, where our people are standing on political mischief and division, and politicians control citizens' hearts and soul before God, before land, before church, before family and country. Dear Dominica, my true confession is what I didn't do. For my allegiance was to someone else, not you. Your advantages, many in numbers, the patriots are few. So it's no wonder we are where we are. We did not stand with you. Now we are best in poverty, fruits of our misplaced loyalty. Now we must turn back to country, each and everybody, beginning with me. Lots of signs, but none so blind as he who will not see. Loyalty to party is the road to poverty. As division brought us progress,
I love it. Take care, man.
Our people enjoying success. It is already late. Come, let's grab our faith and repatriate our hearts, our minds to our country. Urgently, dear Dominica, my true confession is what I didn't do. I watched you suffer, for my allegiance was to someone else, not you. All your exploiters, many are strangers, the patriots are few. So it's no wonder we are where we are. We did not stand with you. Now we live with hostility, fruits of our misplaced loyalty. Now we must turn back to country first, immediately, beginning with me. It won't be easy, change is hard, everything has its price. But for children and country, it is worth the sacrifice. The past is past that we cannot change, but our present and future remains. Take a good look around, we have lost so much ground. Turn around, come around, your loyalty belongs to this country, not that party. Yeah, Dominica, my true confession is what I didn't do. I watched you suffer, for my allegiance was to someone else, not you. All your exploiters, many in numbers, the patriots are few. So it's no wonder we are where we are. We did not stand with you. Now if we are in dishonesty, fruits of a misplaced loyalty. Now we must turn back to country, each and everybody, beginning with me.